Can three $20 microphones compete with pro microphones? Absolutely not, but that really shouldn't matter to you. If you clicked on this video because that was a real question, then you probably don't need to buy pro microphones yet. As an experiment, I decided to find the cheapest condenser microphones that I could find, which led me to Amazon and Neewer. Well, some of them are newer. And, gosh, what are these? Studio condenser microphone, right? I think, I'm not gonna lie, all of these things are probably from China, right? But, and I'm not saying that you can't get good products from China, but these are for, you know, vlogging or, you know, podcasting or whatever. And my goodness, I have like a gas pocket right here. I'm doing this video because a lot of you are under the wrong impression, and a really bad impression. You think that you need all of this stuff to sound good on YouTube or Instagram or even for your own records. And that is not the case, not at all. When I got started, I started with a set of Shure PGs. Now, I thought they were crap because I knew that other things were better. And every time I went into a studio, they obviously weren't using my microphone. So I had to eventually get the same microphones that I saw in studios. There has to be a reason that those microphones are used in studios, right? Well, I'll get to that. But first, let's cover a few reasons why you think you might need gear. The first one is the obvious one, tone. And hopefully with my video, the one that I posted on Instagram, I'll play you a clip. Hopefully that helped to make you second guess some beliefs that you have about gear, because the first rule of miking anything, of recording anything, is good in, good out. If my drums didn't sound good, which they do, I love my drums, but if they don't sound good, then it doesn't matter how expensive the microphone is that you're putting on it. It's not going to sound good. If the microphones don't agree with each other phase-wise, it's not going to sound right. And all of these things are things that you kind of learn on the journey. What happens, I've discovered, is that most people think they have a gear problem, and they really have an ear problem. I've been messing with microphones and recording since about 2004, and I thought that every time I got something new, it was improving my sound. That seems reasonable. The issue is, my ear was growing concurrently with my mic selection. Slowly but surely over the 14, 15 years I started collecting microphones. And I can tell you that I didn't really think of the difference between how much my ear is growing versus the microphone I'm using. And I could not tease out which was which. So this is an experiment that kind of takes me all the way back. It takes me all the way back to the beginning, where I had less than ideal gear. I'm even recording this on my iPhone so that you guys can see that you don't really need that much. These two lights that I have, which I'm not even using right now, I'm only using one of them. This light is the first DSLR light I ever purchased, right? It's like 25, 35 bucks. And it doesn't take that much, especially now that iPhones or cell phones in general look so good. My old Galaxy phones, my old iPhone, in a situation even like this, you would have all of this noise and digital junk, and I'm still not quite comfortable with the way that it processes color and contrast and stuff. It has such a small highlight ceiling. I'm not gonna get on a tangent about that, but it is not impossible to make it look good, or at least good enough, right? Because unless you're trying to become a cinematographer, unless you're trying to do this and make money at it, or, you know, do your own home movies or whatever and just be proud of the fact that it looks so good, if you're playing drums for drum's sake because you want to connect with other drummers, this is fine, right? Buy a $35 light and one of those big batteries, which I'll show you, and I'll link to everything, at least the cheap stuff. And you can get started super soon. As a matter of fact, at the end of this video, I'm gonna give a lot of this stuff away. So this is what I have right now. I'm using my iPhone. I'm using a newer shotgun microphone. Instead of my normal vocal mic, I am using this guy, which is my light. I forget what brand it is. And I will be using 3 microphones, one of which is like $21, the other 2 are $22. And they will be up against my 2 Earthworks SR25s and a Warm Audio 47 Junior on my kick drum. And we're going to see how they compare and what I do when I am in less than optimal situations, because that's the key. Like, having a home studio where you can control every single little thing, that's like cake. But that's not, if you're going out, if you want to work from experience, if you want to build your ear, you know, it's helpful to, if you're not put in suboptimal situations, to create them for yourself, which is again why I decided to try this little experiment. So you guys are on this journey with me, because as of right now, I actually haven't compared my new cheap mics to my old faithfuls. So we're going to compare the tone together. With good microphones, you're not going to fight quite so hard to get the sound that you want if you're aware of the sound that a microphone gives you. Because microphones are tools, and there's a reason that in so many professional recordings, there's still a 57 on that snare drum. A 57 is a $100 microphone, right? There are tons of microphones far more expensive and impressive looking to throw on a snare drum, but that's the one. Now, if you have used it and you also know what other microphones sound like, you can make honest decisions about what you like on your snare drum. Funny story, I went from a 57 that I bought new to a Beta 57 that was recommended by one of my sound guys at the time, and I got it from eBay. And this is a this is a cautionary tale. It broke on me, and I sort of put it away because I also got the Audix i5, and I actually kind of loved the Audix i5 for some things. If I wanted a certain sound, I know I could get it out of that microphone. And I never looked back because I always could get sort of what I wanted from the i5. Well, years and years later, 8 years later probably, I say I'm going to go ahead and get a bunch of stuff, because it's not the only thing that's broken over the years, and sometimes you just don't have the money to get things fixed. I decided to just, write up a list of things that needed to get repaired and sort of start getting them repaired one by one. Well, apart from a couple of in-ears, I decided to also ship my microphone to Shure to get repaired. Well, check this out. It was a fake. It was a knockoff. You have to be careful because with popular microphones on the secondary market, people like to sell cheap imitations, even at a discount, and they'll still make money because they're cheaper to make than the originals. And I didn't know that. You know, I was still green to the secondary market, but so I went from those microphones and I went to the Shure Beta 98 amps, so the ones with the built-in preamps, the gooseneck microphones, and I still like those microphones. Now, I'm not sure if I'm sort of holding on to them because I don't want to jump on the Earthworks bandwagon, but they're great microphones. But I instantly heard the tom sound that I wanted. Granted, I didn't have tom microphones, I had 57s, and the 57s didn't quite do it for me. There are also trade-offs going from the SM 57s to the Beta 98s. Things like bleed, that was a little bit harder to control for. I had to be careful with my EQ because they were condensers and they were picking up just more information, so I had to cut things more aggressively. But all of those things are things that absolutely go into mic choice. If you know what a microphone does, if you know where its little nooks and crannies are as far as the EQ curve, the polar pattern, rejection, all of that stuff, you can make your life really, really easy by choosing the right mic on the right instrument. But the only way to really do that is through experience, by miking, by listening, by mixing yourself. And you learn, oh, I didn't have to work as hard to get the sound that I wanted this way. Again, it may be an ear problem, not a gear problem. I hope this video, as we go into the actual recording and listening back to it and working on this mix, and I show you like what I do to kind of get my sounds, because my sound, oh my gosh, my sound always changes. If I can show you guys what I do and maybe help you guys avoid not just gear acquisition syndrome, but maybe some bad habits that you have while mixing, or if I can talk you guys into just using whatever you have right now to be productive, to be creative, then I would call that a win. So let's go to the computer. Sometimes our ears can trick us to think that louder is better, and that's something that I didn't really know until later on. So, now for trick number one. There's this cool little plugin that I like called Phase Align, which kind of makes everything nice and neat. So let me show you what that looks like here and why that's so important for getting a good sound. Because to me, right now, with everything going on, even with all 6 microphones, you would expect that the drums would sound huge, and they just don't. So let's turn those off for a second. And so we're just going to loop that, and what we do with Phase Align, where are you at? There we go, Auto Align. So we choose one of these guys to send, and so it's going to match with this overhead. Just to make sure that these guys are talking to each other properly, so I'm going to receive from here. And I'm going to catch the peaks of my snare drums, because it can be kind of weird if the timing isn't right on those. So I'm going to let it do its thing. Usually takes a couple of seconds. This is before I turned the metronome on. I decided to kind of be cleaner, even though this is a much easier. Okay, that wasn't that bad, actually. Let's see how that compares to the kick drum. Alright, so I'm going to receive that same signal. But I have to catch what the kick drum is doing. So I'm going to have that one down here, that one here. And maybe we'll hear it come through a little bit more. Maybe so. There we go. Hear that punch that we just got? Now this is sort of best case scenario for these as being raw with no EQ whatsoever. A lot of the magic is going to be with shaping that and sort of making that less dull. Let's go with the Earthworks and do the exact same thing. So picking overhead, I'm going to receive number 2, or send on number 2, and so receive on number 2 on my other tracks. There we go. Sometimes these get moved around, so just kind of making them a little bit tighter is helpful. But according to this, I'm actually super proud of myself, because that means that I set it up right from the beginning, and I don't have to worry about it being in phase. So there is something to be said about getting things right at the source, and this is just for, it can be for problem solving, it can also be for quick little mixes onto YouTube and Instagram, but nothing beats putting in the time. So let's do this one more time. So receive 2 and play. I want to bring that lower just a little bit. Okay. So here's the thing. I actually don't know what they sound like because I forgot to change it over. So let's compare these two drums now that everything, I know that everything is in phase and working together. So let's start with our control. Ooh, the first thing that I notice is that meat from that low end. Now, if there's one thing that I can do to kind of make sure that I know that I'm hearing what I'm hearing, which is just to put this guy on. I can tell, I can see. This is not the EQ that I usually use. I usually use FabFilter Q3, but if this is all about discount stuff, I'm going to try to do this as cheaply as I can without like outright lying to you guys about what this is really like for me. I definitely learned how to play this, play with this EQ first, and this readout, so you can see it actually looks pretty. It's helpful. So let's go to the other one. You hear how thin, instantly thin and tinny it sounds? I'm gonna have to fix all of that stuff in post. My ideal is to get that to sound like the other. Now, look at this guy. There's see 200 here? It's actually not getting past that line. You could see that hopefully with the toms and the snare drum. It's not getting that body. Now, it may not be it may not be as apparent with 3 microphones, but when you start compounding these things, you'll start to get a fuller and fuller sound because all of this stuff is additive. If your microphones are working together, then it should support the body of the drums. But it's just the information just isn't there with the newer microphones, and it's only really apparent when you get them in the same place and doing the same thing. So that's the first thing. Now, I noticed that my first video, I got some distortion, and I may have been clipping, but the first thing that I would think to do, first of all, is to kind of mix it the way that I normally mix it. There's not really too much that I can do. I can see if getting some of that low end, like sub frequencies and stuff, help me focus my kick sound better. So that's one of the first things that I do. So let's go to, well, that one's already playing, right? So I'm gonna start with this guy. And the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to bring this guy up just so it's a little bit warmer. So let's listen to it now compared to the other one. You still how it's still not quite there because it's the high end. It's that tinny 5-7K garbage. So I could try to mellow that high end out. But you have to be careful because then it becomes too dull. Right? It's a little bit better. It's a little bit more even sounding. But it still, to me, lacks some punch. I would check my room tone, see how much of the room I'm getting. Luckily, I have a treated room. It's fairly dry in here, so I don't really hear any of the buildup in the places that you would expect to hear it. And with only 3 microphones, I don't really have too much of that low mid overload. So it's a good start to work on, but again, it still sounds fairly dull. So for me, a lot of bringing something to life, and I've never done it quite like this before, but I'm going to send both of these drum sets through the same compression bus. So just to show you how similar my process is, and you can be able to hear each one separately, hopefully. So let's see if this works the way that I want it to, because I want it to turn off the send as well. So let's play it. Nice. So I'm only hearing the experiment bus go through what is going to be my compression bus. So no magic yet. I'm going to set up a parallel compression bus, which means that there's absolutely there's no compression on my main bus. I'm going to put all of my compression on this second parallel bus. So I'm going to find this guy here, and this is Logic's compressor, and let's go from there. So let's bring this down a little bit because I don't want to clip my master. I feel like my taste for compression, like a compression bus, is somewhere around like 7 or 8 milliseconds of attack. Anything, because I'm not trying to be too aggressive. I'm just trying to add a little bit of meat. But with compression buses, I can up the ratio, because 2-to-1 ratio is very mild. But I do want to hear a little. I want it to dig into the signal to kind of pull some things out, to pull some energy out, and then I can mix it to taste. hear some of those like transients start to kind of poke through, some of those punchier notes, especially with the kick and the snare. You can definitely hear it start to speak a little bit more. All right, let's bring that volume down because right now our compression bus is a lot hotter than our main bus, and let's get those guys a little bit more even. So this is without. This is with. See how the highs come out a little bit more too. Get a little bit more of that crystalline detail. Compression can be a wonderful thing if you use it in the right ways. Let me just show you what happens if I get much crunchier with the compression, so you can see what I mean. Hear the pumping now with the compression? Like, that can be a cool effect, right? But oftentimes, especially for more natural things, unless you're trying to do it on purpose, I wouldn't recommend it. Mixed down, it actually doesn't sound too bad, but I'm, again, much more into natural stuff, so I'm going to bring that attack slower. I also have to be careful because like it also brings out the wash of the cymbals, and that can be problematic because that's where a little bit of that mud lives. So cymbal decay, beautiful cymbal decay usually, but obviously if you affect things digitally, it can change the EQ balance of your track. So there's that, and it's, you see how much thinner it is by itself? So I'm going to be treating my master bus like a drum bus. Like usually you would set up a master drum bus, so you have your affected drums and your natural drums hitting the same place, and then blending that into the other instrument tracks and vocal buses that you're working with. But because there is no backing track or anything like that, I'm basically going to treat my master bus like my master drum bus because that's all there is. You know what? On my compression bus, I actually like to add a little bit of saturation. I can do that here. But I can't tailor it the way that I want. There are a couple ways to do it. So there's a distortion, like an overdrive, that you can use. So let's try this out. First of all, let me just get a full range just so I can see what's going on. Hear that mud? Do you hear that mud now? So I'm going to go in and do a little bit of EQing on this guy, on the actual one. I don't want to affect that because I'm going to get both dry thins through the compression. So I'd like to fix it at the source and not overall. This is not the greatest time to do like a top-down mixing type of thing. So let's listen to it again. So since the compression thing is going, anything that I adjust here is also going to be adjusted in the parallel compression bus, and so you'll hear that reflected in the bigger picture. That's what I was hearing. Okay, so there's that, and so I don't want. See, this is where it gets tricky. I told you I was gonna do everything blanket, but if it were me, sorry, as far as the tone goes, and I guess I should do level compensation, huh? That makes sense.
still sounds fairly dark. So I'm gonna reintroduce this guy because I just want to see what happens. Actually, I am the most. Let's do this. Because I still don't want that ugliness. Gosh, it just sounds so thin, right? So I'm gonna bring this up a little bit. Now, why in the world did I bring one through? Why did I bring that down? Because I'm trying to make it sound darker. And I've already boosted like 5 decibels of EQ. Every time that you boost EQ digitally, you are creating harmonics that don't exist in the actual original recording. So, if you want to make something darker, you could always boost things, but you could also cut the high mid range and get that sort of seesaw effect. As one thing comes down, it makes room for the other thing. It makes it sound darker by comparison, and that's sort of what I was going for here. And so, just kind of want to make it less tinny, and let's see what happens here. That sounds clearer to me. But there's still not a lot of meat on those bones. So here is trick number 2. And this is something that unfortunately does not come in stock Logic. And it's a little bit more precise than its distortion, because you could see it had a simple filter on it that you could basically sort of just like a high pass filter or whatever. So we're gonna go to Vitamin, which is, it's this weird kind of multi-band saturator / compressor, and you can dial in the amount of compression that you want from here. Oh, an imager too. And so the harmonics you can actually spread in a stereo way or tighten it up. So you could do them all at once, or you could do them individually. And I tend to center my low end in my mix if I'm not doing like a stereo bass thing, like a EDM type of thing, because I want to draw a path into my mix most of the time where sort of the more like it's conical shaped. That's the way that I think about it. And so if I'm thinking about drums and like high-end percussion stuff being sort of the wings of it, I'm looking inward towards my bass and towards my towards my my kick drum. So it doesn't always work, but I tend to like that shape, or visualizing that shape whenever I'm mixing. So we're gonna dial in artificially with this plugin some of that low, mid, and low end that I think we're missing. You could also focus some of that mid range too. Hear that snare drum sort of come alive. And so everything is dark, so let's bring in that high end. So there's no amount of introducing harmonics that is going to make these guys sound like this, which we still haven't really heard with the compression yet. At least not to me. It's all there. It's all the way there. But if I go back and forth, like the second one, minus like a little bit of high end that I can probably bring from this guy because vitamins gave me quite a bit. That right now at this stage, the cheap microphones don't sound bad. I can hear everything, which is always the first step. Oh, fine. I'll have to do that after I'm done shooting this before I edit. But what would happen if I took my vitamins and beefed this part up? Now let's go back and forth. First of all, again, I need to match my... This is with no EQ on the other side. I could change that. But you see how it gets brittle when I start to adjust this guy's EQ? Because it's so close. It's so close already to a sound that you could use. And so, like, if I just go ahead and apply maybe like basic, like a slow, like a bus compression, maybe like 30, that looks good. Yep. So I could just kiss it. Let's go back and forth. I'm not getting the same output. Listen to that. So if I scoop the same way that I scooped before, just a little bit of that. I also want to check out my kick drums. So you're getting, you need to come up by 2. They have changed the game. myself. If one of them is significantly louder than the other, then the compressor is going to behave differently and it's going to give me a different sound, and I need to make sure that I'm not doing that. That's punchier, but flubby. Meat. I can even sneak this back here a little bit so I can just get a little bit more aggression. And so now, let's just add some mass. No, I haven't done any type of space yet. So reverb. I've been digging chroma. I just want to make it sound bigger. And so basically I'm going to artificially create a room mic. And there are a couple ways that you can do this. Like the first way obviously is just to set up room mics. But I like to pretend like this is a room mic. The first thing that I'll do is like take this low end out just so it's not in the way of the kick drum. I probably didn't have to do that because it has some EQ in here. I don't know why I keep doing that, but let's see. It's already shelved off at the top, so I can take that out. I mean, Logic's plugins don't actually take that much CPU, so it's fine, but here we are. It's too much. So, if you can, listen to the nature of the reverb. Hear the pumpy as soon as I lower the threshold? I kind of dig that. But I'm going to bring that down because why? Also, I want to squeeze the reverb time. I could do that in there too, but if I have a faster attack time, I just hear a little bit more of the drums come through. There are also, there are a couple of things that I do miss. Oh yeah, here's a stereo width. Never mind. Forget what I was going to say. I have no idea what ultra sounds like. This is all new. And with the other. Like they're in a room now. Now, for the really janky way, let's get this thing as loud as we can get it. Now, I didn't do anything to the tracks. Notice that. Depending on what I'm trying to go for, I definitely will do that at times. There's some mud and some things that can be clearer. There's some low end that can be boosted. I think that both of the microphones on the kick could use some compression and some other things like, oh no. That sounds more natural to me. I'm not sure if you guys have picked up on this yet, but to get the other one as lively as the first, do you hear how much like gunk kind of comes with it? Like how as soon as I start messing around with it, it starts to sound cheap. But if I take it off, so here's an experiment. Let's take the exact same instance of vitamins and put it here and see if that does the same thing or not. Interesting, right? So that same instance of vitamins, and all of this like scooped out, I boosted, and you saw what I did. Like, it's not a presence of a bunch of mid-range, right? Those are the microphones. I actually scooped mid-range out of those microphones and boosted the lows. And no matter what I can do, no matter what I do when I have them side by side, I can't get these microphones to sound like my Old Faithful microphones here. So I think that is case in point for why microphones that you can trust, that you know what they sound like, are reliable. Now, forgive me, I absolutely hate mixing in headphones. I'm not used to it. I'm used to mixing with monitors. I just needed to get a clean vocal take here so that I could talk to you guys while I work on this. Try this one more time. But look, bring all this down. So at this point, I really would have to, in order for me to, like I did on the video before, I would have to go into the channels individually. I'd have to look into the kick drum mic and check that out. So what I can do is take some of that mid-range out, some of that high end out. Boost it myself. There's no reason for that. It's already They'll probably clean up a lot of that tinniness from before. What did I tell you? Now, things like going in here and seeing if they agree with each other. I'm guessing one of those peaks is snare drum ring. Guess not. There's that 200, there 400, whatever from before. So if I go and find out where the culprit is, I'll always undo it here. Now what happens if I reintroduce this guy? Tinnying into me, but maybe we can split the difference. About here. Now let's compare it. That's in the overhead, obviously. Actually, I'm not quite sure if that's the case. That sounds the worst to me when I'm hitting that kick drum, so I probably should go ahead and cut that frequency in the kick drum. Oh, the snare drum in the kick drum mic. Hear all that? Ooh. Things came alive a little bit. Did you hear that? Hear that snare drum come through? The mud sort of went away. Now let's listen to the other one. It still sounds tinny. And remember, I have the same instance of vitamins on the first one as I do the second one. So no matter what type of harmonics, like there's still no real comparison. There are tons of ways to get around this. You could use samples. You can use samples. You can actually tune your kick drum, which I came off a couple of heavy practice days and I haven't readdressed it. I just wanted to be as candid as humanly possible. But you see how there are some differences, and this is the difference with the EQ. Like, very minimal EQ with the control group, but even to get the low end for it to not sound thin, like, remember, this is off, so all EQ, let's take that off of the buses. Right? Same instance of vitamins. As a starting point, I would want to go with the control, obviously. But again, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be useful for you. But here's the thing. 15 years ago, I couldn't go in there and tell you the differences. I could use terms like bright, dark, muddy, full, but I didn't know where to go on the EQ spectrum for those types of things. And if you got lost through all of this stuff, because all of this is still a discovery to me, if you got lost through this, then you, to me, have no business with a set of Earthworks microphones. You have no idea how to put them to use yet. So this was a great experiment for me because I really got to see. And when I mixed this before for my Instagram video, I didn't use a control. I mean, I did the same thing where I recorded both, but I never actually compared them. I just threw it up because I thought that Instagram would have a kick out of me using three $20 microphones. But now with the proof in the pudding, I'm glad that I didn't, because I mean, it was nice to just have this time with you guys to sit down and go through it all and kind of fish my way through these drum sounds. So there's a reason that I'm not a professional mixing engineer. I still have a lot to learn, but I hope that this was helpful. Like, you can get it sounding okay, and if I went in and, you know, did all of the things that people do, throw compression and on everything, sweeten everything up. So here's for shiggles. Let's do that. And I'm gonna use my plugins. Like, I'm not gonna mess around with Logic stuff anymore. First thing I notice, kick drum's not hot enough. My balance is different now. Gonna bring this back in. So I struggle with that kick drum because in my headphones it feels like it's sort of leading the pack, and I don't want it to be so out front. That feels better to me, which means that this one is going to, well, maybe not, we'll see. I bring the compressor up. Gonna get rid of that pumpy. but that's just more like, this is not fun. That's a rookie mistake, because I'm getting feedback from my my limiter. And I don't want that. I like having it on just so I don't peak on my master bus, but my input should not be anywhere close to it. I don't want it actively working. Same thing with this guy. Just kissing it, just making it a little bit more even. But to me, it just still sounds so small. That was the hard part of getting this right. And this just gives me everything that I want right off the gate. Yeah, I could clean up this EQ. I wonder if that's that spike. So I can be a lot more subtle with these moves, because you can hear them pulling, like doing something. There's meat on those bones to work with. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to bring up that kick drum. Actually, that sounds great. Just some more focus. I don't think there's an auto leveler for this, so. Can bring that up just a little bit more, but let's toy with a little bit of compression. So what I like to do is I like to do my compressor before my EQ, because I don't like messing up my EQ balance too much. So I'm gonna have this thing kiss that kick drum, and so you can hear that transient come out. Let's try this one. There we go. That's what I want. Now let's listen to everything is being affected by everything else. You have to make sure that you follow through it because there's that clipping. Ugh. Now, just to be fair, let's give this one compression too. Hitting around the same range. There's just no comparison. Just kissing that limiter, so there's still those dynamics. I can crush it if I want. Being led by the kick drum. Sounds good to me. But now change its relationship to the limiter, so I'm going to bring that limiter up a little bit. Now that everything's even, I can bring that threshold in. By the way, Logic's limiter is a little weird. Instead of the threshold, bringing down the threshold, you're actually bringing up the gain, so you're meeting that ceiling. And then you can control the output ceiling. And so, like, the kick is obviously in control here, because that's the thing that the limiter seems to be catching. So the more I bring that kick down, the more even it's going to interact with my limiter. And you see now that I'm bringing everything up, like the snare drum is coming up, that high-end detail is coming up. So I did all of that stuff just to have to redo my balance real fast because of the way that it was introduced, the way that it was. So I did all of that stuff just so I had to. So I did all that stuff, and then I had to readdress my balance because of how it was interacting with my my mix bus. I didn't mean for this to be a mixing lesson, but I wanted you guys to see kind of the types of things that I do here when I'm behind the computer. Ooh. And so I'm assuming it's a very similar thing here. But not quite, because by the time it gets there, again, it's only like a couple of dB out. And I don't want to, well, let me make sure that my output's similar. So 5, yeah, so most things being equal, I'm engaging with the compressor and the limiter on the master bus with each one in a similar way. So dynamically, everything looks very similar, but it sounds so different. Like it's on a telephone. And remember, Well, I mean, this was my experiment. So if I can bring this back down, flat, right? Some of my mixing decisions from before are starting to make a little bit more sense with like that telephone frequency here. There's just nothing that I can do. I can bring that down because that was for the kick drum. But since my snare drum really isn't doing too much in that range, especially with that guy, the small guy, that's not going to magically give me back the meat and potatoes. So I would be better off just taking from 200 on and doing that shelf again. But it's still not clear. So, really quick, let's go back and let's see if we bring down that kick drum super far, what happens? Okay, so we were up to, so let's make that gain back up here in vitamins. Just things are clearer, it still sounds like a telephone to me. And remember, same exact vitamin EQ on both tracks. A little bit more volume. I know, yeah, I can take some of the brittleness out of it. It still doesn't give it its meat. And so I have to make decisions here. I have to figure out, do I want more meat and can I deal with that 360, 420 low end, like low mid mud? Like those types of concessions, I don't want to make as a mixing engineer. And so this is what I meant by, again, saving time. If I can get what I want super fast, I don't have to pull all of this out of my ass. I can just like use my ears. And I mean, now I've been working on this for 45 minutes. This would be the time for me to take a break and come back if this were a serious project. I'm not dealing with references. That's sort of mistake number one. And I'm sure I've made plenty others. This is the difference. It's fine. It's hollow sounding, but it's fine. And if I put that mid-range back in, this is going to sound more like a telephone. Remember, I boosted from what, 200 on? So if I'm a little bit more drastic, let's say I do this. This guy right here, like this 4 dB, but like I know that it doesn't matter. I think it's like sound is all that matters, but geez, like you have to introduce all of this stuff just to get it to sound okay. And it, so and now I'm clipping again here. So let's bring that back. There we go. So one final note before I stop this portion. These guys do not have the same high-end response, and my ears are probably tired. As soon as I took these things off, I noticed how much high-end was going through everything. And so I feel like I fixed it. So I did change the vitamins things around a little bit. So if you just want to see, sorry, for your reference. So this is added quite a bit of high-end energy, I think, to this one. And I took some of that low mid out of this one. I also added a mid side thing. So on my sides, I have a low cut or a high pass. And so here is my experiment bus. It should sound a lot better on your speakers than it does for me. You do get a little bit of that clarity, though. And then here is the control. So there's that punch. But I mean, that's without close mics and all the other stuff to kind of really help that snare like center and be a lot more present in the mix. You always have to remember that there's no close mics on this except for the kick. So everything that you're hearing is really just what the overheads are picking up. And notice how much, in my opinion, how much more body the snare drum has on the control on the Earthworks side than it does in the $20 microphones. One more thing that surprises me with these guys. I thought there'd be much more high-end hype with the cheap condensers than there are with the Earthworks, but to my ear, they sound a little bit more dull. I still have a shelf here just because I want it to have that crystalline quality, but look at how much I'm boosting. So if they're side by side, I'm boosting this one more on the high end than I am on the control. So 3.1, 1.7. It's much gentler because I'm not worried about that tinny, scratchy sibilance frequency of the thing that I sort of cut all out from the beginning. So, in summation, this sound right here perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it, especially if you're a beginner. But could you get these microphones to sound like that? Maybe you could. Maybe you could get them to sound better. But the only thing that I can be is sort of honest about where I am and what I do. And that's it. I mean, at least with, this is the simplest thing that I would possibly do. There are a couple of other tricks that I use, but I'm going to have to save that for another time because this video is entirely too long. Now, I have not figured out a way to give these microphones away. So, if you hear this and you don't have microphones, if you hear this right here, oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. There we go. So if you hear this and you feel like this is something that you can use. Uh-oh. What happened? If you hear this and you feel like this is something that you can use, oh my gosh, that snare rattle on that tom. Gonna have to figure out how to handle that. Anyways. How about this? Anybody that shares this video on their social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, anybody that shares this will be entered into a drawing, and I'll announce the winner in 2 weeks when I release my next episode. How's that sound?